Are you going to stop between each one of the segments, or you're just going to keep going?
We'll just go.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to sort of kneel down here.
Okay.
Right. Today's October 10th, 2002, and this is the beginning of an interview with Marilyn Frazier at Flag Spring, Kentucky. Mrs. Frazier is 80 years old, having been born on July 19th, 1922. My name is Deanna Beinecke, and I'll be the interviewer. Mrs. Frazier is a retired nurse practitioner. Ms. Frazier, could you state for the recording what war and branch of service you served in, what was your rank, and where did you serve?
I was a second lieutenant in World War II, and I served overseas in Manila, the Philippine Islands.
Where were you living when you joined?
I was home and helping out at a camp for boys until I was called in.
Okay. Why did you join? I mean, obviously you weren't drafted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Why did you join the service?
Well, I have laughingly said my dad was the original patriot. Of course, he wasn't that old, but he was that kind of a soul. And he was in the First World War as a Marine, and he was really patriotic, very serious about doing what you could for your country and your family and so forth. And he sort of inculcated that feeling of doing something with all of us. There were 8 of us. I had 4 brothers and 3 sisters, and all 6 of us were in the service. All the boys were in the Marine Corps, and my sister was also a Marine, woman Marine, and then when my class got in their second year at Mary Hitchcock Memorial Hospital in Hanover, New Hampshire, Dartmouth, good dates up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
They had initiated something, the United States government had initiated what was called the Cadet Nurse Corps. And my whole class committed themselves to joining, and the idea was to stay in nursing and then give your service of some way because of the war. So those 2 things, my dad's making us feel patriotic and that we ought to do something, and then I could add my brother. I told you they were all in the Marine Corps, 4 of them, and my brother Kenneth had been injured, and he was at Guadalcanal. And I thought perhaps if I joined the Navy that I might run into one of my brothers. And so I just did that. However, in New Hampshire, our quota for the number of nurses that were called up, it was very low. And the Navy did tell me, I had a commission in the Navy, but they had told me that I might not be able to be called up for quite a long time. Well, all the rest of my class were in something. One was even doing Veterans Hospital service. So they suggested if I wanted to get into it right away that I would let that commission go and join the Army, which I did. And I went through basic training at Fort Devens in Massachusetts. And as soon as that happened, I was sent to a staging area in North Carolina, Columbia, I believe. Is that north or south?
It's in South Carolina.
South Carolina, right. It was Columbia, South Carolina. And then we went back on up to Brooklyn Navy Yard, and we went out on a hospital ship and away we went.
Well, do you recall your very first days in service? Tell me about boot camp.
Oh my. Well, as serious as it was, and we were hearing of such terrible things happening and the boys being killed, we tried to keep it light at times. And I remember boot camp as kind of fun. I didn't like the regimentation at all. And we pulled some crazy things because of that. And got caught a couple of times and disciplined, you know, not regular.
Did you want to talk about any of those pranks?
Yes, I could. One day we decided that we had heard, "Now hear this, and you will proceed," to whatever. You were constantly getting directions, and you knew you had to take care of that. And one day, rather than going out in the old drab uniform and whatever we were doing, perhaps it was, I think it was a 10-mile hike, as a matter of fact. And a group of us got together and we wore on things that were not regulation. And of course, we didn't think anybody paid any attention to it. But they did. And they gave us extra calisthenics to do in front of all the different units out on the parade ground.
Did you learn a lesson?
Sort of.
Sort of.
Well, we weren't out to make trouble, but it was kind of fun. I wore yellow socks.
You wore yellow socks. And somebody was paying attention.
Somebody paid attention.
Do you remember your instructors?
Yes, no, but not the names. In fact, I dated two of them. They were all first lieutenants as for our drills and so forth, and our hikes and so on. So they really knew their business. They'd been in, and they were instructors now, and they were able to put us through our paces. And they really did, prescribed by the Army, of course. And we even went into a pit and learned to throw a hand grenade. We climbed the rigging, so to speak, like many of the boys had to do. We dug latrines. We did all sorts of things that we might be called upon. And their explanation was, "You may be the only officer left, and you'd be in charge." Well, we thought that was sort of ridiculous, but we understood the precept on that, and so.
Did you have weapons training?
No, we did not. We did go through the house that had the gas in it, and we had to put on a gas mask the correct way and so forth. But I never carried a weapon.
Okay.
None of us did.
Where did you go after boot camp?
Went to the staging area in North Carolina.
Okay.
South Carolina.
South Carolina.
South Carolina.
How long were you there?
I don't really remember, but it was there. This was in 45 now. And it was while I was at the staging area that the Japanese capitulated, and we were, the war was over. So from there we went on back up to the Navy Yard, Brooklyn Navy Yard, and out on the hospital ship.
Okay, so did you serve all of your time then on that ship?
No, that was just merely transport, really. We went down the Atlantic coast, went through the Panama Canal, but we spent 2 weeks in Cologne and Cristobal area out in the bay while the hospital ship was being repaired.
Mm-hmm.
It had been through the war, but we were on it. We went through the canal and saw all the barracuda and so forth out there, and the raising and lowering of the locks. And then we were on the Pacific side and spent another 2 weeks there for more repairs, just going through the canal. And then on to Hawaii, where we had more repairs for the hospital ship, actually changed the ships, and lo and behold, my hospital ship was the Saint Mihiel, and my dad had fought at that battle in France.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah. Yeah.
From Hawaii, then we went on to the Philippines. My orders were changed in Hawaii, and it split my best friend and myself just right between us. She was a McMahon, Agnes McMahon, and I was Moore. And she went one place and I went another, and I never saw her again, which hurt.
Yeah. Do you have any idea what happened to her?
No, I was scheduled for Japan,
Mm-hmm.
and had even taken some Japanese lessons in language, words and phrases and so on. And we thought all of us were, but those orders were changed. And I went to the Philippines in General MacArthur's mop-up. And I believe she ended up in Japan, but I have no way of knowing. I never heard from her even. And I had no way of knowing where to send anything
Yeah.
to her.
Do you remember when you arrived in the Philippines? What month was it?
It was in September.
Okay, so shortly after
Mhm.
the war
Right,
was over.
right,
Very shortly.
because it was in August and in September.
What was your job assignment then while you were there?
I was assigned to a nurses' convent as far as where I would live, and my duties were rather intensive for a while. We had turned the old Philippine University into an orthopedic hospital. And the boys that came in there, our boys, were badly wounded and in trouble for the most part. And they were shipped out back to the States as soon as that was possible. I was a night float, and I would make a round from one boy to the next one, to the next one, back around, all night long. They had to have things done for them because of the seriousness of the wound. There was a lot of sniping. The war was over, but there was a lot of sniping. And there were stab wounds and various things of that nature. And mines, land mines that had been stepped on and that sort of thing. So, but it all had to do with orthopedics, the bone. And that was intensive. I actually earned a commendation for my work there. Didn't expect it, but the commander at the hospital, don't ask me his name, that's gone out of my head, but he had a written commendation for me because of my work.
Congratulations.
No medals, you know.
That's all right.
No, I was proud of that.
Oh, you should be. Should be.
I was glad to be off 12 and 18-hour duty, too.
Mm-hmm. Was that fairly common, the 12 and 18 hours at a time?
Not unless it was really necessary. I think it had been. we found ourselves doing things that we were not allowed to do back in the States. I came from Mary Hitchcock Hospital, and interns did the things that we were expected to do. And they're just not enough to go around, you know. The nurses had to step in, and we had been trained. I never was so happy that I had chosen Mary Hitchcock Memorial Hospital for my School of Nursing, because when I got out there and had to do it on my own, nobody was looking over my shoulder and passing me on this particular procedure. And I had to do IVs and blood transfusions and things like that that were nothing but interns back in the States. And they did them.
You want to talk about a couple of your most memorable experiences?
They have to do with my poor judgment at the time. It has to do with some of the entertainment, you might say, that we have. And we took trips when we had some time off, and a group of us would go. Like we went to see Corregidor. I wanted to see what the people had put up with and so forth, what was still there. And while I was there, I noticed something, an object on the ground, and I just real quickly stooped over, picked it up. Didn't recognize it, and then suddenly I did. And at that time, one of the officers took it from my hand very gingerly, lobbed it off in the district and over a good ways from where we were, and it exploded. It was a Japanese grenade.
Oh.
Hand grenade. That was one of them. Then, as far as entertainment goes, a group of the officers from the Signal Corps, I met a man over there, my only husband. He is now deceased, and he was in the Signal Corps, and he built a club, and we would go there and have refreshments and sometimes eat and so forth. And he really built up. He was an engineer. He built up the Santa Tomas permanent depot for the Signal Corps there in Manila. And we'd go there. And they had, a group of the officers rented a home out in a little place way out in the country called San Francisco del Monte. Isn't that a name? And we had a couple, a Filipino couple that took care of it. We would go out there and have parties and so forth. And one day we were there, and when we got there, Jim and myself, we saw several of them with sticks of some kind prodding a wall. And it wasn't a solid wall, it was like lattice work and so on. And I stopped and went down like this, you know, on my hands on my knees, trying to see what was going on. And out from one of those little apertures in that wall came one of the deadliest snakes you can find. And it came right out. I was very quick. Reflexes were good. And got back out of the way of that rice snake. Yes, it was shivery.
What about your living conditions? You said you didn't live on the ship, you lived in a convent area.
Yes, in Manila when I first got there, we lived in the convent. Then I was moved to a field hospital, and we lived in Quonset huts then. And again, I was a night nurse, and I had 2 Quonset huts of our own boys. to take care of at night, which was quite an education for me. I heard some things I had never heard before, and words that my mother would have washed my mouth out with. And still in all, there were lots of things to do there for the boys, besides medicate and sedate and do treatments and so on, and like write letters and listen and sort of reassure and so on, help them get back as soon as they could onto a plane and get back home.
How many nurses were there with you in your unit?
I really couldn't give you a number, but because we were spread all over Manila, I really don't have a good concept of numbers.
You weren't the only nurse there.
Oh, no, no, no.
Though,
No.
Where you were.
Right.
specifically.
I'm sure there were 20 or 30 in my particular area, in this out in the boonies, so to speak.
It wasn't like living in a hotel or a home.
Oh, no, no. And my where we were, we did not have good food, great food. We put up with all the faux food that they had, and spam, and you know, the dehydrated this and that, and potatoes and eggs, and it was a very what the word was, I don't know, but it was the same. For instance, when we deactivated the orthopedic hospital, we had spam every meal, morning, noon, night. So when my husband he wasn't a husband then, but he'd come over and get me, I would loved it when we'd go to his mess hall and eat. Another thing that we did was go to Subic Bay, and the Navy was at Subic Bay. This would be entertainment. We took a trip up there, and lo and behold, ice cream. The Navy had ice cream.
They had ice cream, but you didn't.
Right.
So you got to go on a trip and get some.
Right. And when we went on, that reminds me of the rest leave I had of 2 weeks. They sent me to Baguio, way up in the northern Luzon, the peninsula. We could look over and see the shore of China.
Huh.
Yeah, that was north for the Philippines.
Yeah.
But up there, we got the surprise of our lives, because there was fresh fruit and vegetables and milk. And when we ran out of it on the hospital ship, there was no more. We didn't have any more for months. But I let the rest leave there with cucumbers and tomatoes and radishes and lettuce and all the good stuff, right.
All the good stuff. Oh, that's great. Let's see. We'll talk about your life. You said the food was lousy.
Well,
what about supplies? Didn't have fresh fruit and vegetables. Did you have enough in terms of supplies at the hospital?
we really did have the supplies we needed, and bandaging and so forth, and the medical supplies, the medication. Nothing like we have now, mercy. It was very, very meager according to today, but there was enough to do what we had to do. And if it was so crucial that there would be things that weren't there, machines and, you know, the mechanical parts and so forth, they were put on a plane and sent back just as fast as they could get them back to the States. They went back to the Presidio in San Francisco.
Any idea how long the average stay was for one of your patients?
I really don't have a clue on that because it depends. I would say a few weeks. It would depend on how critical the entity was. And someone who had their abdomen all shot up, and many of them did. They would have days. If it was that critical, yes, they went back in days.
You referred earlier to our boys. Obviously, you were there to take care of the American soldiers and sailors. Did you treat any of the Philippine people also?
Yes, we actually did. We had a lot of Philippine folk that helped out. And we actually had some Japanese prisoners of war who helped out. And in the next place that I went after the field hospital, I went to a way out in the boonies. It was closer to what would have been the front, but of course that was quiet then. There were Japanese folk there. And interesting, I told you I had a smattering of Japanese at that time, and I was talking to one of them, giving them some instructions, and I said, "Do you know where you are?" And he told me Florida. They had that's what they did for many of those privates or whatever they called them. They were told that they were going to Florida, and they thought they were in Florida. I had 5 of them helping me, and this one was a rehab hospital, or my section of it was, because I'm a sort of artsy myself, and we taught weaving, and there were art supplies and lots of things that they could do. They did macrame and all kinds of things to get their hands moving again and so on, and get their minds on something else besides their how they hurt. And it was the 5 of those boys were there. I thought that was weird, and one of them said he was in Hawaii.
But they thought they were in U.S. territory.
Yes, they did. They had been told that's where they were going. And good night. You can imagine how far away the Philippines is from Japan, not the thousands of miles back to the States.
Right. You say the second hospital, the rehab unit, was your...
This was my third spot.
Third spot?
Yeah.
Okay. How long were you there?
Until I was sent back. I got a mild case of encephalitis, and I was sent back on a plane with some of the patients that I had taken care of there at that hospital.
Huh.
One of the boys, I might tell you this, there were also something that boys that I worked with that were our own boys, but they were prisoners. They had committed crime while they were over there. That was shocking to me to think that we had that sort of thing. And one of those boys came back with me on that plane.
Military's like the rest of the world. You got good guys and bad guys on occasion.
Oh my, yes. Well, most of it was things like stealing, black market. The biggest was black market. And they were making a little bundle on the side, you know. War was over, and why not?
They get caught.
They had attitudes, I tell you.
They probably probably would have had attitudes if they hadn't been in the
Right.
Army. What kind of pressures or stress did you feel while you were over there?
I think mostly, as far as I'm concerned, it was the fact that I didn't want to think about how chancy or iffy things were with all the sniping and so on. And when we were on Corregidor, for instance, we came upon a Japanese cave, and the entrance was covered with spider webs. And we were actually contemplating going in that cave, knocking it down, but good sense came to the fore, and we didn't. And I kind of lost my thought there for a minute.
The pressure and the stress and the
Yes, that kind of thing. You should have been aware at all times. But you can't really operate like that. And I knew that there could be a bullet out there that would get me. I didn't have a gun, wasn't in combat, but it could have happened. And we would try to take one day at a time, not think about what's down the road.
Did you lose any of the nurses in your unit to snipers?
No, we did not. Not while I was there.
Good.
Not while I was there.
That's good.
I was sent back in June of 46.
So you had been there from September until June?
Mm-hmm. On the high seas, and we still had blackouts and so forth on, but because of the submarines. But as when we went over, when I came back, it was equally bad because the plane stopped at Guam, which was a real shock. Guam had nothing to say for it, except that our boys were there and holding it together. There were hardly any trees. You know, they were all splintered and down, and buildings were shot to pieces. It was a mess. And when we went out that night, and we had to have 3 armed escorts to take us to the club. So there were, you know, there were still things. The Japanese didn't give up easily, some of them. So there was that kind of stress, you know. There was always the fact that, hey, you may not make it back.
But you did, and we're very glad.
Yes, yes.
Hey, what other kinds of entertainment to relieve the stress did you have? You said you met your future husband there,
Right.
so sort of hooked up and were able
Right.
to go out with him. What other kinds of things?
We called it the club. I'm sure there was another name, but it was also their mess hall, and we'd go there and we'd have parties and so on. And I was there for Christmas, and I was again, culture shock. Christmas over there isn't a pine tree or a fir tree and decorations red and green and gold and so forth. Gold, yes, gold and silver was what they had. They did not have our Christmas colors, and certainly no snow. But we would celebrate holidays there at the club and hold dances and so on. Mostly, I'd say our trips was seeing the island, Manila and others, and going to Baguio and so on. That was wonderful to have a rest leave.
Did you get passes other than your 2 weeks? Did you get an occasional weekend pass or 3 days?
I never asked for a pass that other than to check out and check in. That was what we were required to do. The same in Hawaii when I was there. We had no duty, but we had to check in every day for at 10 o'clock in the morning. We had to be back at the barracks. And we were out, our barracks were right outside Pearl Harbor, and we saw a lot of Hawaii that way, and I were able to go and do, but check in and out.
Was that during your repair time? On the way
Yes,
over?
actually, our mutual uncle let me stay in Hawaii for a whole month while the hospital ship was being repaired. And then they changed this hospital ship anyway. And I went out on the St. Mihiel back over to Manila.
How did you stay in touch with your family? You mentioned all of your brothers and some of your sisters
Yes.
were also involved.
My brother, Kenneth, that I told you was in Guadalcanal, was one of the reasons I wanted to do the Navy. I thought I had a chance of meeting up with one of them. And Kenneth was in Guadalcanal and went through hell. And Harrison was in Cuba watching the canal to make sure nothing happened there. My brother David ended up over in units that were guarding Chiang Kai-shek in China. And my poor brother Courtney had a problem that the Marines had to let him be discharged. So I wanted maybe meet up with one of them. That was another reason for choosing the Navy, but the Army got me.
The Army got
Yeah.
You never got to meet up with any of them while they were there?
No, I didn't ever see anyone. But when I first went to Manila and went to the convent, I was looking up the names of the nurses who had been there. And there was my roommate in my senior year from Mary Hitchcock Memorial Hospital. She was over there. And she introduced me to Jim Frazier, who was from West Virginia.
So it worked out all right.
Oh, it worked out all right.
Worked out just fine.
Yes,
Worked out
yes,
just
it
fine.
was. I don't think I've answered your question. I kind of went
But
off.
That's all right. I was asking how you kept in touch with your family.
Oh, I sent a war bond back to my dad to put away every month, and I sent letters. I was a good letter writer.
Did you
And-
get lots of letters?
Yes, yes, I did, and I got packages. And one that just broke my heart. I asked my mother if she could please send me, I won't be able to think of the name of it, and I always get it, but a cheese. It's a cheese loaf. What do we call it?
Cheese logs?
Well,
Better cheese?
it was a processed, a soft processed cheese. I should have known better. It's tropical where I was. When it got to me, it was all mold.
Oh, the Velveeta type.
Velveeta, you
Velveeta.
got it.
You did some Velveeta.
Yes.
Didn't work, huh?
No, that hurt my feelings.
Any particularly unusual things, other than the fact of living under threat of a sniper all the time, that occurred while you were there?
There were always Japanese soldiers who tried to emulate the natives, and they would infiltrate into the mess lines. And there was usually problems there. And of course, their mess lines were the same as ours in the units that I was in. I think I have probably told you most of what that was significant to me, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you keep any kind of diary?
No, I really didn't. I put everything in my letters that I saw that some things were cut out, but not much, because after all, the war was over then, you know, and my letter home, I don't think mattered. And I was pretty specific about things.
What about when your service ended? You remember when that was?
Yes, I had been ill with the encephalitis, and I came out of the Presidio, and I was actually demobbed there, and they sent me back in a plane. Which reminds me, I had never been flown in a plane, but I flew the Pacific Ocean to get back to the States.
So they sent you from the Philippines
They sent me
Presidio?
to the Presidio,
How long were
and
you there?
I was there 3 months. And then I came back, no, not 3 months, 2 months, or a portion of that. And then I flew back to St. Louis and into Boston, where my family picked me up, and I was officially discharged.
Officially discharged. What did you do once you got out of the hospital and you got home? What did you do for the first few weeks?
Hung around. And then I got a job with our local hospital there, Huggins Hospital, and I once again did night duty, and I was the night supervisor for Huggins.
You said you met your husband in the Philippines. Now, he didn't come back with you.
No, he did not. I came back first because of my medical problem. And then he came back. He had many more points than I did. And he came back. And shortly after he got back, he asked me to come to West Virginia, to Charleston area. And I went down there. Then he came on back up to my home, spent a little time. And then on January the 1st, because the minister was out of town with a death, he couldn't marry us in the church like we planned to have a wedding. And West Virginia and New Hampshire are quite far apart. And I didn't try to go back. I didn't have a big wedding in the church. We just were married by a Methodist minister.
No, it's January 1st,
46.
46, 47?
No, 47.
47.
47,
Okay. January 1st, 1947.
right.
All right.
I told you I was very bad on dates.
That's all right. That's all right.
Since after being married for 24 years, I divorced and have been single since.
Okay. So did you go back to school at all? You didn't get your RN?
I could have told you that. I should have, I guess. Right after I graduated in February of 45, I took the tests that would give me my registration, and I became a registered nurse in February or March, one of the two. And so then I worked as a registered nurse in a number of places. My husband and I went to Columbus, Ohio, and lived there for 10 years. And I worked on private duty. I wasn't ready to go back into the hospital situation. Private duty, and I had 2 of my youngsters there, and 2 girls, Marcy and Beth. And then he was in Jeffrey Manufacturing, which manufactured coal mining equipment, conveyors and cutters and all those kinds of things. And he was a salesman and met up with a company in Whitesburg, Kentucky. And he decided to leave Jeffrey and go with that company because he was hired as superintendent of all above ground operations. So we went from Columbus, Ohio, which I dearly loved. Oh, I loved that place. And then we went to Whitesburg, and that was a culture shock. I stopped a man to ask directions once down there, and he said, he gave them to me, and he's looking at me like I was some sort of a creature. And later he told someone that I was a foreigner.
Because you weren't from there.
No, if you weren't from Letcher County, you weren't. You were a foreigner.
Did you ever join any veterans organizations after you?
Actually, I didn't. Not while I was in Columbus, nor was there, I don't think there was one in Whitesburg that I remember. I didn't join one until I moved here after Whitesburg. And I belong to the post in, it's right across the river from Cincinnati, Kentucky. And I'm a lifetime member there. Mainly because I chose to do it because there are not any American Legion posts around. And my dad was commander and led the parades, and also it was a big deal in New England. And he was just fully behind the American Legion post up there. But there weren't any around, so I went with the VFW.
Okay. All right. In what ways did your service experience, I don't know if I'd call it military experience, but your service experience influence your thinking about the military in general, about war? Did it change your ideas from what your dad had?
No, not really. I told you the kind of fun pranks that we pulled. And we also wore hair curlers underneath our bandanas. You know, there is an uniform of the day, and it didn't include hair curlers. But we had dates, and we wanted our hair to look like something instead of nothing after a 10-mile or 5-mile hike. This isn't basic. And so that was a little discipline too.
Yeah, I bet.
Well, it was just doing extra calisthenics. Didn't hurt a bit. No, I look back at my time in the Army Nurse Corps, and it was mostly a good time. And even in the stress and strain of Manila, I had a very good time there, and I met wonderful people and good friends and that sort of thing. I feel good about where I was and what I had to do, because I was in hands-on nursing, which I really appreciated. It gave me what I needed for later on in life. Other places that I have been, and I've done a lot of different types of nursing, I feel like it was good training. Even the discipline, because I understood why. But I had to push.
It's not that unusual. Have you kept up with any of those friendships, or have you lost touch with most of those people?
Most of them, yes, I have, and it's probably my own fault because I got into the no writing kind of thing, and then it just sort of slipped away. It's been a long time since I've talked with any of them. We used to call back and forth, though.
That's all right.
And we haven't, as far as I know, we haven't had a reunion of my particular class. It's possible I quite missed it.
And you're not ready to start one up at this time?
No, I think not. I would like to know where some of them are.
Maybe this will prompt somebody to get in touch with you.
That'd be neat.
Anything else that you would like to say? Anything else you would like to talk about? I know you've got some pictures, and I'll get copies of those.
Right. The pictures that I have, many of them were taken by Jim, my ex. He was in the Signal Corps, and that was a portion of his responsibility. And there are some good pictures. The devastation. Manila was a beautiful city, but not when I saw it. The churches and the public buildings, the legislature and so forth, just ruins. Many of them completely gutted. And when I first got there, I was so taken in going into Manila Bay to see dead limbs torn off, and dead dogs in the street, and all that sort of thing. And they were being uncovered by and covered up again by bulldozers and so on. There was such devastation there. And what I have of pictures are not those, but they're indicative of the tremendous pounding that the Philippines took. It was really something to see beautiful buildings in shambles. I saw people living in the crypts and in the cemeteries. There so many places were just gone. And I'd love to go back and see what Manila looks like now.
You've not been back there?
No, I haven't. I haven't had, as far as I'm concerned, the wherewithal to make a trip like that. But I would love to know what Manila has how it has been redone. It'd be great.
Anything else you would like to say?
I think you've covered a lot.
Well, we appreciate your time and your willingness to do this. I thank you so much for your service. The whole country appreciates it.
Well, I think, is this the end now? I think,
We've got time on the tape. You talk and say whatever you want to say.
I think finally, not so much what I did. I wasn't in combat per se, but I helped what I could over there. I did what I could. And it was our privilege, really, to do it and to know. And I helped as far as I hoped that somebody was taking care of my brother, who was so badly injured in the Navy, the Marine Corps, and because I couldn't be there. And I liked the fact that finally, people today have been zeroing in on what our boys did over there. You know, in the Pacific, in Africa, in Europe, in England, all over, wherever they served. They're finally getting some recognition. Many young people don't know about this. And you know, one of the things in DAR, Daughters of the American Revolution, which is right here in this county, one of the things that they do is to promote education and patriotism in schools and for young people. And I'm glad to be a part of that, because it's all part of, don't forget what somebody else has laid down their life for you and are still serving, many of them. Not so many as were. If I'm 80, you know people that went in with me. Many of them are no longer there.
That's why we're trying to collect the ones that we can now.
Yes, it's neat. I think what you're doing is wonderful. It's most unexpected for me. I couldn't imagine myself doing it, and here I am talking and talking.
Boy, thank you so much again for your time.
You're most welcome.